Okay, I wonder if we should make a start then. We have got this being live streamed by Dawny, and I've put the link in the chat. Um, so please do watch that or follow that link if you need to. Um, so good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for coming. Safia can't be with us today, so Lorin and I are going to be both guest and host as we discuss how our particular disciplines relate to the world of machinima. Lorin Tone has rapidly become one of the best sound engineers in Second Life. His work is famous everywhere and the person everybody that turns to for advice on all aspects of sound. And he's going to be talking more about that. And I'm Fakey Jewell. I'm writer and director for the Jewell Theatre. We began back in 2007 together with Dorian Cow, the technical director. We've toured over 14 full-length original productions and we've taken part in several machinima projects. So Lorin and I had the idea to interview each other. Lorin, do you want to start us off?
Sure, and hello to everybody. Thank you for attending. Fakey, we're going with live performances or stage performances and machinima. So, how do you find that directing the live stage performances differs from or is related to directing for machinima?
Oh, that's a great question. I know. See, I when I'm directing for live performances, I direct in the round. And so you quite often, if you're at rehearsals, will see me flying from one side to the other to see what my audience is going to be able to see as a whole, because I don't want people on one end to miss a lot of very important action. When you are working with a machinimatographer, or you are being a machinimatographer, you've got to think of the camera as a character in the play. And because it's a narrator, I mean, I always think that the camera is a narrator. And so what you have to do is direct that as much as you direct your cast. Give it the same amount of space. Think about the shoulder. We have this saying in the theatre when we're in the middle of rehearsals: tits to the action. I know it's a little crude and I apologize in advance, but what it means is make sure that you know that you are pointing, your avatar is pointing at the audience or is pointing to the person that you are having that conversation with, and you need to know that your camera is too. When we were working on one of our 48-hour machinima festival entries, I was working with the fabulous Toxic Menges, and what I think it was Dorian that came up with the idea of a viewing frame. And literally, he gave her this frame, and she could put the frame anywhere that she wanted, and that would show me what she was looking at. Because when you're trying to direct and you can't see through the camera yourself, you can share screen, but that would obviously slow the machinimatographer down, and we don't want that at any circumstance. So we would create this frame, and it meant that we could literally see the picture almost in live time, and that worked really well. So I hope that that's a, a full answer, Lorin. But yeah,
Well,
I do treat the camera as an actor in the space.
yes, the camera can or perhaps should be uh, the point of view, so to speak, as the audience itself or uh, the subject, perhaps, of the piece.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now I've got a question for you, Lorin. So I've called you a sound expert and the go-to guy for anything that anybody wants to know about any kind of sound effects in Second Life and for machinima, but I have so little knowledge of what that entails. Can you talk more about that?
Certainly, Creating in-world sound effects and then applying them is about the only thing that I do well in virtual worlds. So I dedicate myself to that. Um, it it is an art to an extent because due to the nature of the way sound in Second Life works, it is proximity based. So it is based on either what the avatar is going to hear from the location that the avatar is in, or from the point of view again of the camera itself. So as the camera zooms in closer to an object that is making sound, the louder it will get. The farther away it will get, it, the volume will go down to an extent. Now, an interesting thing that I've found here working on a part of the fantasy fair this year, uh, recently they made a bunch of improvements to in-world sound effects, and one of those improvements has been the distance of virtual area that the sound can be heard in. I found that it has really surprised me in that, especially in the z-axis as opposed to the x and y, the z-axis, it seems to travel farther. I wish I had a full understanding of why that is. But
That seems really strange, doesn't it?
well, yes, originally, and for many, many years, if you were further than 25 to 30, 35, 40 max meters away, the sound basically was not heard.
Huh?
I'm speaking in terms of if there is an object emitting that sound, you are that distance away. Now I'm hearing sound effects, yeah, especially in the z-axis, which I've been having to work on for the fantasy fair. I'm finding it travels well over 200, over in some cases 400 meters. It depends how loud the sound is recorded. So that's only one of the aspects that makes it difficult and kind of a specialized medium. The other thing that I do, of course, is sound effects for machinima, and that's a completely different uh, basis of tools that that need to be used.
Mm.
If that if that answers your question correctly.
I'm fascinated by it because I literally have only just been complaining of hearing noises of things that I probably wouldn't have heard before, and it hadn't occurred to me that that was because of changes.
Yes, I was taken by surprise at that. They have it, of course, has to have been deliberate, but it hasn't particularly been announced that I know of. I've only stumbled onto it by having to do a lot of sound work on this year's fantasy fair, and I'm noticing, oh my heavens, uh, I'm I'm having to bring my volume down on a lot of objects that are playing the sounds just to make sure that the sound doesn't travel too far. It used to be the exact opposite in the past. So it's a very
Okay.
interesting development.
Ah.
And that said, oh yes, Katora, it is. It's very interesting indeed. Um, let's jump to a little bit further. When working on machinima, or when working on a live stage performance, as you do, we have to coordinate the actions to make things go as smoothly as possible. And what approaches for a live performance do you take to make the collaboration, make it so that the vision that you're trying to present is clear to the person behind the camera and you know, an extension of that, the viewer who will eventually, or the viewers who will eventually see it, whether on camera or live.
I think collaboration is a huge topic, and it is really interesting. And I think in a theatre group, we have to come with that, in spades, because the whole point of having a theatre group is not that people just turn up and they stand where you put them, but they bring something of themselves to it. In the cinematographer point of view, you've got to have a really close relationship with your cinematographer. You've got to know that they understand your vision and the tone and the genre of what you're trying to achieve. It's quite tricky, I think, when people when we've worked in 48 hour, usually my cinematographer is with me, and they know what we've got to work toward. They were there when we were writing the script, and they've listened to the rehearsal, the walkthrough. They've watched me dictate to where the actors have got to stand and what they've got to be doing. If somebody comes to actually record our live performance, in my heart, I want to make sure that they have sat through it, that they have seen the play in its entirety, that they understand. There's lots of devices. I mean, if we're putting on a comedy, then what I want to know is that my cinematographer will understand that there needs to be several swift cuts. You don't want long, drawn out shots if you're trying to make things bouncy and clipped. There's a tone that goes with it, if that makes sense.
It actually absolutely makes sense. Please go on.
Yeah, and I think that talking about that, and certainly when we used to do 48, I loved the 48 hours. So we, as a theatre group, we would all get ourselves into a sleep pattern so that we could all share the maximum amount of hours that we could on Second Life, rather than everybody having to go off to bed at different times. We would get our lots of food in, we'd all sleep together, we'd put out a big itinerary of when things were going to happen. We would do all the shopping together, all the sourcing together, and even with the shopping, I could say somebody's costume was exactly how I wanted it to look for the script that I'd written. But if the cinematographer would say, no, it's not going to work, the leg keeps sticking through the skirt, then yeah, they always had the final word, because they're seeing the view. And also in editing, sometimes I would have to say, I need that edit to be a lot sharper than that. I need that line. I mean, in 48 hours, sometimes you don't have time, but later, when looking at a production itself, you can say, no, there's a joke here, there's a punchline, that's got to be a much snappier edit. So yeah, you find you can work together. it's and I really love it. I really enjoy that. But I do think you've got to leave your ego at the door. We have a saying in the drama group, the only drama is on the stage, and the only boss of the drama group is the script, and
Yes.
and it works well. So so I want to fire a question back at you now. So how can sound or music be utilized to convey emotion? And it's probably a similar question, because it depends on the genre of the production, I guess. But would you tell me a little more about that, how you can make things moody or get a general feel of things in world in a machinima production? Did I lose you, Lorin? I may have lost Lorin. Oh, he did say that he might crash. Now, if he crashes, what I'm going to do, um, I'm going to talk a little bit more about theatre in Second Life and also the machinima that we've done, because I know that for pretty much everybody here, you are interested in machinima. And we have, I actually did my master's degree in the UK in writing scripts for radio and television, and so we never did any camera work per se, but we did have to learn about how cameras work and how they relate to the genre and the tone, and stupid little things like if somebody was filming this conversation between Lorin and I, then from where you are sitting, I am on the left and Lorin is on the right. And that sounds obvious. However, if a camera starts to move around characters, in the moving around, that's absolutely fine, as long as it returns to Fakey being on the left and Lorin being on the right, because the eye has this kind of rightness. When you're seeing a conversation between two characters, you want them in the same position in a particular conversation. And you also want to be thinking about the center. I always used to try and explain, oh, Lorin might be back. I'm going to give him a couple of minutes and then I will go back to his question and I'll ask it him again. But I was trying to say about the center of the stage, and I'll say to my cast, okay, this scene is about you. And so you need to be in the middle. You need to command that part of the stage, and the other people need to try and push you out of it, not physically, but with their words. They're trying to get up in your face, they're trying to make you relinquish that area. And so with the cameras, it's a very similar thing. You've got to think about the distance from the action, what that means. If a couple's in love and you want to show they're in love, you want to storm in and get a good close-up. Lorin, are you back? Have we got you back?
Yes, I am. I apologize.
Excellent.
That was awkward.
No worries. I was waxing lyrical while you were gone, so hopefully that wasn't too distressing for anybody. I'm going to ask you my question again, sweetheart.
Okay.
So what I wanted to know is how you can engender sound and emotion and mood using sound or music.
Many ways, of course. The first and most unlikely that one would think of is the sounds that you're hearing in the environment that is being depicted, whether it's in the a theater performance or in a video in a machinima. Actually, you can set the mood with the environmental sound effects that are being used. And that is one way. Of course, with music, music can be very expressive in setting a tone for any kind of scene, and it's very important. Sometimes the lack of music or the lack of a sound is just as important as the sound being there, if that makes any sense.
That makes total sense to me.
Many ways to do that. Oh yes, and Katori mentioned silence can be powerful. In fact, if anybody ever needs it, I have a sound of silence. I have a silence for 10 seconds. I have a 30-second sound of silence because incredibly, as a sound designer, I find that I have to use silence. The difficult part is perhaps determining where the silence is most needed and how long it should be before, okay, we make a noise here. But
Yeah.
there are so many ways to convey a mood, an environment, even a thought or an implied thought using sound. If
I've
that
always,
answers your question, I'm sorry, go
it
ahead.
does, because I'm remembering the first time that I watched Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Oh,
I don't know
yes.
if anybody remembers that film. And I think it was the first time, and I was probably far too young to be watching that film at the time. And there's a scene where they go into a house and they find a man who has been killed by the birds, the flock of birds. And they have this 3-shot scene. You see his legs all scratched, you see his torso all scratched, and then you see his face, and he has no
Yes.
eyes. And
Oh, that
there's no
unforgettable scene.
music in that. Yeah, there's no music, no sound. It's just click, click,
And
click. I was absolutely horrified because usually
yes,
you get the sound, you get the music, and you know something's coming. You can grab the pillow and cover your eyes and all of that. And it's like, that frightened the producers out of me. I was so scared. I thought it was such a good use of sound. I think he really was the master, wasn't he?
oh, absolutely. And then again, with, for example, and that was a very powerful scene that sticks in my memory. And on the other side of the fence, oh, pardon the train coming by. The train comes by and runs through my home every half hour or so. I apologize. Um,
Well, I
conversely,
was,
the way he used the strings, the violins in the shower scene in Psycho, and I won't sing it. You
yes,
all know how it
yes,
goes. So
yeah,
that was okay, and the chills go up your spine, and it elicits a very visceral response. I guess
yes.
is the way I would put it.
Yeah, it was relentless. It was very, very good. Yeah, and incidentally, folks, I live on a boat, so I can't promise there won't be a flock of geese going by mine. So
Yes,
they can be very noisy this time of year.
yes. And I do recall having lived on a houseboat myself once, as we were discussing earlier today. And yes, and where I'm currently living now, we do have the Canadian geese fly over. There's a lake about a half a mile
Yeah,
away from here where they go and hang out and all year round. And I love the sounds of geese. They're
yeah.
interesting birds. But anyway, but back to the topics at hand. Let's see. I've got one here for you. Again, with rehearsing an ensemble of people. Say, you have to have an ensemble of people,
Uh-huh.
X number of people to do a stage production or to act in a machinima. What what methods do you find to be the best to both rehearse, set up the scene, and then you know put the scene into motion? How do you? What tools or what approaches do you find to be the most effective in wrangling X number of people? Because that can be a really challenging thing to do.
Yes, it can, and it's probably one of the things that we work the hardest on. We have a lot of fun, like Dorian said earlier. We always have this saying, "Who has more fun than us?" But we rehearse. I mean, we rehearse for probably 6 to 8 weeks before a production. I will not use pose balls unless I absolutely have to, unless we need a character to do a specific thing. And even then, it will There will just be sit poses, and they'll just be for a brief moment. I'm not asking people to give up their time and their energy to come and just be animated, where I mean, you know, they don't feel they have any agency. I think that's a dreadful thing to do to people. But that does mean that we've got to rehearse. You've got to know where you've got to enter. And usually what I will do, I will go and stand exactly where I want the actor to be. And I will get them to come and bump me out of the space. And I'll say, that's your spot. Because quite often, Dorian builds these absolutely glorious sets, and if you ever get the chance, have a wander down to Samandirial and have a look in the theatre. He uses a Reza system, and our stage manager is brilliant, and what she does is she lays it all out, and then the actors know what they've got to walk around. But we are really anti pose balls unless we absolutely have to. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever been to a dance where you've seen a lineup of dancers and somehow one gets out of sync, and that's absolutely not their fault. They can do nothing about it. I mean,
Yes.
we're not, yeah, we're not dancers. You know, if you come and you're bringing something of yourself, and I will write a script, and sometimes and I direct, and I will say to an actor, right, I want you to do this, this, and this. But we did a production called Snow, and we had a new actor in that production, and he had to play a wolf cub, and there was everybody that wasn't actually in the scene was playing a wolf cub, including myself. And he decided, because later he had to be a man in the play and couldn't be a wolf cub anymore, he made himself a dying wolf cub. No one asked him to do that. He just started getting sick. And we were all there going, oh no, he's sick. I thought it was brilliant. I love that. I love when people bring their brains to the performance. And when, I mean, you don't want everybody flying off doing their own thing, but they're thinking about what they can do. It's not going to affect everybody else. It's not going to ruin the show, but it is going to enrich it. And I love that. And I think if I just had a production full of people on pose balls, I would lose that entirely. And really, I could just use bots. And that's a shame. I mean, you talk about sound, Lorin. In the Jewell Theatre, we have always done our productions using text. We drop our lines so the audience are reading, and then we will get somebody on a live streaming what do you call the radio things that actually cast, and they will read the play so that you can either listen to them and watch the action. You can be on a completely different region and just listen to the play like a radio play, or you can come to the play, not listen to the stream, and just sit and read it. And certainly if obviously I'm British, you know, so I write in English, and if you don't speak English, you know, reading it often is a much easier way of following what's going on. I talk fast. I've got a bit of an accent, you know, so that's how we've never managed to make sound work for us in the theatre because of the distance. But maybe I should try again now with you saying that it's all been changed. I find that quite interesting. My actors won't be very impressed with that, though.
Well, yes, and in terms of sound,
Oh, yes.
there are tools that can be used to overcome that that distance, and for theatrical events specifically.
Yes.
We should discuss that at some point. For
Well, I think
perhaps
we should
build a sound
drag you
system
along.
into your theater. Yes, in terms of wrangling, I could relate a story from, I think it was 11, 12 years ago. One of the first machinima productions that our whole gang got involved with was having Chantal Harvey film us doing a musical based on a, uh, a piece called Godzilla Eats Las Vegas by Eric Whitaker, who I actually met during an interview here in Second Life years ago. But it was, a comedy. It was utterly ridiculous, in which Godzilla comes and wrecks Las Vegas until the army of miniature Elvises come to save the day. And we had 20 miniature Elvises running around with machine guns and on tanks blasting away at Godzilla. And, all that was said in the script was, okay, run around, blow up Godzilla, and, do stupid, silly things. And we did hours of that. And Chantal just mixed it all down brilliantly, as she does, and made sense of it. But at the time of the shoot, it was complete mayhem. Since then, we learned to, okay, we've got to really organize this a little bit better in advance, Otherwise, we're killing people, being in from around the world, 30 different people acting and having to do it for hours because it was not well rehearsed. So that's an example of
I think
the mayhem.
Yeah, I think people do find it very comforting if they turn up and it's organised. People are very happy to wait their turn if they know they're going to get a turn. But I think if people are turning up and they don't feel that you've got a plan for them, they do panic, and or they lose heart, perhaps is a better phrase.
Oops, my audio crapped out there. I didn't hear the last part of your sentence. Please repeat.
Oh, I was just saying that I think if people feel that there's not a plan, they lose heart. They lose heart in it. Now, I wanted to ask you a question, Lorin. You teach classes, so I
Oops,
know.
Has my computer crapped out?
Oh,
No, I think I'm still here.
I can hear you very clearly. Can you not hear me?
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Okay, I apologize.
No worries.
Boy, Bill Gates is really trying to frustrate me today by playing all kinds of games with my computer.
I'm going to ask my question in text for you, Lorin. I don't know if you can hear me, but at least you'll get the question. No, I may be about to lose Lorin again.
On the classes.
Oh.
The classes that I teach are built around a set of scripts. I think I've got your mic back, Fakey.
Excellent.
Yes, I do. Thank you. I work around the scripts that I give away, and I do demonstration of how each script works, and just as importantly, how not to make the sound, behave. And so we go through that from the very beginning part, and then go on to more advanced applications of using, either music or environmental sound effects, or just sound effects in given objects. If you're making a car, you want it to sound like that specific car. Long lines like that. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, who attends your classes? Is it just machinimatographers, or is it a range of people?
Oh, no, it's, in fact, I've only recently started bringing machinima into it. It's mainly just a range of people that are attracted to it because I advertise, hey, look, this is the one element that people don't think to use as much as they could to make any given environment, story, whatever you're doing, more immersive. you are not making it completely immersive without using sound.
Mm.
Ah,
Wow.
can you hear that?
Yeah.
That was a goose flying over. See, I told you about the Canadian geese. They're they're here.
Yes. So you find that your classes are very well attended?
In the usual terms of virtual worlds, it's it's
Yes.
it's entirely unpredictable. You can have a very popular class and only have 2 or 3 people up. Sometimes nobody shows up because
Yeah.
sometimes people are busy. But I just, keep on going on and doing it. I find that people who do take the time to go into it come to the realization that yes, I do need to make things more immersive. Not necessarily need to, but that I can if I understand how to do it. I'm not afraid to do it and not afraid to test to make it the way immersive in the way that you want it for whatever environment you're creating, whatever story you're trying to tell.
Yeah, we do classes in the theatre from time to time, and I really enjoy it. We haven't done one for ages, and we are overdue. We are about to. I've got another production I'd like to put together, and we need more casties. So I need to do some lessons on getting into the theatre and moving around a stage and thinking about your gaze and your position on the stage and everything. So we have to get you over to talk us through some sound effects.
I'd be most happy to. And in terms of theater, I quit my acting career, I shall say, at the in 6th grade when uh, I was in a play, Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare. I was Demetrius, my friend was Lysander, and we came out to the moment of the sword fight, and we're all ready, and we drew our swords, which were pieces of cardboard covered in tin foil, and on guard, and my sword drooped and just went, "Ugh,"
Oh
and
no!
and
A
so Jeff,
Demetrius with a droopy sword.
yes, so Jeff just
That's
reaches over and
inspiring,
goes
actually.
boing 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 with his hand, and
That's
uh,
hysterical.
that was okay. I figured this is not for me.
Oh, wet cardboard killed your career on the stage at Lorin. That's a tragedy. That's a tragedy right there.
It was it was the acting gods telling me I had a different calling, I suppose. So moving forward,
Uh-huh.
let's let's go on about tools that we use for our given uh, hobbies, professions,
Uh-huh.
whatever. What do you find the most useful tools to both organize and execute a live performance with, an ensemble of people?
I am a massive fan. I mean, I've got lots of different tools for lots of different things. I am a massive fan of Google Docs. So because you can invite everybody to edit at the same time. And like we were joking earlier, and Dorian said that I write UK English instead of American English, and sometimes I'll write things that just do not translate. And I am very good when that happens at saying, okay, what did I want? I wanted the word balderdash in a recent play, and somebody said, "Oh, I don't understand what balderdash means," and so you kind of have to think, "Oh, I really like that word. Do I want to defend it or do I want to let it go?" And in one play we did, I wanted a pantomime dame. That does seem a little bit of a hot topic now. And I was trying to explain to all my American actors what a pantomime dame is. Now, if you're in the UK and you're sat here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you are in America, you think I'm talking about a man in drag. And of course, it's not a man in drag at all. And Dorian eventually came up with a, do you mean like the guys in Monty Python when they dress up as women? I went, yes, very much like that, only with significantly more bows and makeup, you know, because you know, things just don't necessarily translate. And in Google Docs, what can happen? I'll write the script, I'll put it up into Google Docs, everybody can look at it and they will go, what the hell is this fakey? And I can rewrite the line, or I can take that out, I can do what I like, but everybody can edit at the same time. As a writer, I love Scrivener. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It is just the best thing for writing. I love it. I've done a little bit of my own machinima, but I am going to tell you that I am pretty rubbish. And I use Camtasia, and I've been using Camtasia to film myself teaching creative writing, because I've been teaching creative writing for over 20 years. I have to give a shout out to Discord. We rely on that very heavily. Dropbox to a point. Audacity, which is free. Who's going to argue with that? But yeah, all of those. Google Docs. Love Google Docs. So those are mine. What about yours?
Yes, I had frankly forgotten about Google Docs. We were using that on a setup. We were making an in-world game to play, and we used that a lot. I've got to get myself back into the habit of that. Camtasia is a great piece of software. I used to use that back in the days that I was still working my profession. We used Camtasia to do captures and also uh, primitive streams at the time. Oh, here comes the train again. Hello, train. And for my tools, of course, Audacity is, without question, in my opinion, the best free audio editing software out there. So I do use that, but just for one specific function. The main audio editing tool that I use is SoundForge.
Yes. Yeah.
Music creation, I use both Vegas, which is, I'm sorry, Acid, which is a loop-based thing, kind of like a Mac's version of it called Band in a Box. And for sequencing, for music creation, I use a digital audio workstation called, oh, damn it, what is it? I forget the name of it, and I use it every day. And I will say I cannot use Discord because it really messes up my computer. Oh, and the digital audio workstation I use is called Ableton. Let's see, any other tools of note? Of course, Dropbox, as you had mentioned. And let's see. Oh, for video captures, of course, as you do with Camtasia. Of course, the go-to tool for that for years was Fraps.
Yes.
But now,
yeah.
and I'm sure you're probably aware of it. OSG. Is that the?
I am aware. I think Dorian's used that. But you know, so I am aware of that, and that's also free, isn't it?
I'm sorry, OBS Studio. That's it.
OBS Studio, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Dorian. Yes, it's a Swiss Army knife of piece of software. You can do video capture, both in world and of anything else, and as well as streaming. And it's The user interface, although fairly straightforward, goes quite deep, and it's. I'm still learning it. I started over 2 months ago, and still finding new things just by playing with it almost on a daily basis. So it's a really fantastic piece of software that I wish we had had when I was doing a video production as a profession. Because oh boy, to have a studio suite like that available for free was unheard of, absolutely unheard of.
What I love as well is it means that, it's kind of a hobby for any pocket. And there may be people out there that would like to get involved in machinima, and they're thinking, well, I need this, I need this, I need this. And you kind of really don't. As long as you're prepared to go out there, experiment, make mistakes, tweak things, make things a little better. Okay, so it might not necessarily be crystal quality, and you're watching machinima and you're thinking, I wish I could make something of better quality, but it's so great that you can get these things for free and have a go. I love that about
It
machinima,
it
I think.
it really is, and it, as you say, it's just a matter of getting in and doing it. It's you can read up on it, you can watch all the videos, the how-to videos, which are helpful, but really the
Yeah.
way to learn it is to make mistakes, to blow it, to go,
Yes.
okay, I understand how I blew it, and this is how I will not do it in the future. And so, if that way doesn't work, I've got to figure out a way that for whatever application I'm working on, okay, so how do I make it work better?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's much like music. If practice, 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 and make mistakes and work your way around
Yes.
it. What's the cheat? What's the hack? That if my ability does not rise to the level, how do I fake the audience out? Basically,
Yeah.
it's it's
Fake it until you make it.
it's
Absolutely.
it's it's really that's a part of any kind of artistic endeavor, theatrical endeavor, entertainment
Yeah,
endeavor. So that it's
yeah, for sure.
highly important.
I wanted to ask you actually, because I was actually sent into Second Life by a university that wanted to know if virtual theatre was theoretically possible. And I came into it and said, yes, it is. I need some money. And they went, oh, well, right, our interest in that has um, reduced, if not waned, go away. And so I was kind of left here to walk the earth and think, well, what do I do with this knowledge? And I was lucky, there was a journey. But I wondered how you would recommend making entertainment and education more digestible and immersive in a virtual world environment.
Well, of course, above all, the content is above all the most important thing. But I will repeat that sound or music, not lazily done, but done with a dedication to expressing that with music or with sound will, everybody, well, most people in virtual worlds can make something that's pretty, that's an environment that looks good, it's fun to walk through, but it's not going to come alive without music or sound effects. If I walk into a beautifully appointed jungle in a virtual world and it's silent or it sounds
Yeah,
like New York downtown, it's not going to be it's not going to be effective. And one way that people make it too immersive is to do, for example, one sound that repeats over and over
oh
and
God, yeah.
over, and it just drives me nuts. Um,
Yes.
my Second Life partner, Judy Newell, is here, and we have always hated one particular bird sound that just repeats and repeats. It was so prevalent in virtual worlds in Second Life when we first came in that I instantly came to hate the damn thing. And so I set out to say, okay, how do I do better than this stupid sound that's
Yes.
just driving me nuts? It will chase me away. So it's
Yeah.
used properly. I believe the sound is good and you can make the objects, all that. Then you have to think about how does the environment look? Is the sun out? Is it night? What do the clouds look like? It's all that.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Uh, have you ever been in a position where you bring people in to talk about sound in world? Or do you find your audience inside already?
That somewhat depends on the project that I'm working on. Um, for example, as far as bringing people in, I have had to bring in help working on. I think it's okay for me to say this on the Fantasy Fair Quest this year. I just got too much stuff thrown on my plate, so I brought in an assistant to help. But in terms of bringing people it, in terms of just making it more immersive, it really depends on the project or story or machinima video that is being created. But I think of it in not only in terms of music and sound, but also all other, all visual elements of it, all practical elements of it in terms of staging. And, you know, as you have said, as you explained very well earlier, it's a matter of practice. It's a matter of learning to make the actors, not make them, but enable them to convey the story that you are all trying to tell in the whole thing.
Yes, and to bring something of themselves to it. I think that's the really important thing.
Yes, as opposed to the pose balls or
Yeah,
that whole
and
thing.
and also, yeah, not being, I think, too uptight about. I mean, if you've written a sad play and somebody comes in wanting to do some slapstick comedy, then clearly that's not going to work. But
Yes,
if it's on point with the tone of the piece, with the genre of the piece, I think that can really work.
yes, it can, and I'm really looking forward to. Now I've got to get over to the Jewell Theater. I think I I was at one or two of the performances many years ago, and I've got to get back over there and enjoy one of your productions and learn from it because
Or
we're all
vice
here to
versa.
learn.
Yeah.
We're all here to learn. That's the important thing.
Yes. Yeah. I completely agree. I wondered, anyone in the audience, do you have any questions you want to ask either of us?
Ooh, good one. Yes, we could do that.
Prida asked, Lorin, I was interested in how you mess with sound effects. What
Mm,
specifically, Prida?
yes,
The example.
let's see.
Oh, the Doppler effect. Yes. Oh my God. That is a really good question.
Yes, and of course the Doppler effect is going to be heard or experienced more commonly. For example, if your avatar is flying through an area and you go zoom past the object and that is the Doppler effect. It's like a train coming by, as we heard earlier. that. Now the Doppler effect also is a thing that I fight to prevent happening when I do sound effects installations, what I call soundscapes. Um, I find that you can minimize that Doppler effect most effectively by not having the same exact sound looping within a close proximity to an emitter with the exact same sound. If I've got, for example, walking in a straight line, I've got 200 meters of the same sound placed every 25 meters apart. You're going to get Doppler effect that's going to drive you nuts. So say I've got, well, for example, on the Quest here, there's an instance, I will say, where I have to use the sounds of a number of small streams. I forbid myself from using the same stream sound in that given proximity more than once. I put similar sounds, but that will reduce the Doppler effect, because usually the thing that causes that most often I find is the same sound being emitted repeatedly over a given distance. Beyond that, which is actually a major sound problem, I don't think any better way. As I said, it becomes more pronounced if you're flying through a region and you're going quickly past the sound emitters. You're going to get that. You're going to get that in real life. It's just how sound works. But the best way to avoid it is to not place two sound emitters that are exactly identical within a close distance of each other.
Wow, that's fascinating. Does that answer your question, Prida?
Yes, I hope I understood it properly, Prida.
Oh, also a good question, Judy. Yes, we have to be very what's the word? Flexible about our times. So what we usually do, we used to do them all sorts of weird and wonderful times, but we came to a happy compromise of 3 p.m. SLT on a Saturday, which meant my UK casties didn't get too overly tired. It's still late, but it's not, it's like 11 till half midnight for them. And then on Sundays we would do noon SLT, which meant 8 p.m. in the UK, and that seemed to work very well. We never ever could find a provision for our Australian colleagues, so that was unfortunate. But as we didn't have anybody in Australia in our cast, that was something that we never had to worry about. But I guess we could at a push, but it would have been difficult. But yeah, our rehearsals, we used to rehearse at more or less the same time as well, so that casties would get used to it. But it's a good question. I seemed to live, I mean, for the years that we did plays over and over, I seemed to live in 2 time zones all the time, and I always knew what time it was in SLT whenever I looked at my watch.
Oh gosh,
Thank you.
I don't know how you handled that, Fakey, because
It's not easy, but
I'm in
yeah.
California, so I'm always on Second Lifetime, and still I have trouble, so you're doing far better than I am.
It was just something we always had to think about. So Lorin, another question for you. Which software would you recommend to simulate the 3D location of an audio source? That's a good question.
Do you mean using in-world sound effects? While in editing, yes, that's more difficult to do than in a virtual world, because in the virtual world, due to the proximity nature of the sound, of course, you just place the sound emitters up higher if you want to be them to be heard from on high, so to speak, underwater, down low, like that. It's more difficult, especially when you're using stereo tools. So the way I handle it is I try to use it in increments of left and right. And one way that you can, for example, emulate, if you're not using real surround sound software, um, you can emulate by going with higher frequencies, more centered, lower frequencies, say a lower volume and just the lower frequency, slightly separated on the left and right with two almost identical sounds, will create the kind of the feel of it coming from below you. The emulation of something that is supposedly above the point of view of the viewer, that's a really difficult thing to do. It's you can do it with panning to an extent, but it's more using volume and frequencies. And for example, in a machinima thing, it's very difficult to emulate without doing it in surround sound. I could do it in surround sound. I can do the 5 channels in SoundForge, but very few people have a surround sound system in their home. Most have stereo, and of course, if you're wearing a headset, it's generally, unless you're using, one of the virtual world viewers, that those work very effectively. I was blown away. My brother brought one over to demonstrate it to me. Those emulate the 5-dimensional thing very well. Doing it on a stereo setup is very difficult, and in a way, not entirely possible. But again, how do you fake it to get through it? That's a question I can only answer partially, because heck, I don't really know. I constantly try to do it, and sometimes it works. Sometimes I get lucky, sometimes not.
Thank you, Lorin. I hope that answered your question, Godiva. I think we've overshot our time now, folks. If you do have any more questions for either myself or Lorin, I'm sure both of us are very happy to accept IMs and answer anything that you may want to know.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And please do if you ever have sound issues or questions. And I will go to Fakey for tips on how to organize people better.
We're quite good at herding cats.
Yes, being a
what
cat
do we always say,
avatar,
Dorian? We're like swans. We're very
Yes.
serene on the surface. We're kicking like mad things underneath. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes,
I'm
thank
very
you for
grateful.
attending. Thank you for attending, and thank you, Fakey. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Lorin. It's been great to chat.
We shall do it more, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Oh, now, Fakey, when is your next production going to be?
Well,
Can you
I've just written
advertise
a
for us,
murder.
please?
Well, I've written a murder mystery, and I am trying to put a cast together. So I've got to get some more casties. So I'm hoping to do that in May, and then hopefully September. we'll hope to put our murder mystery event on in September. Who knows? That's my fingers are crossed.
Okay, yes, and if I can help with any way in establishing sounds that you may need, hey, I'm your
I
guy. So
absolutely do. I absolutely do need sounds, and I will be banging on your door, Lorin. Thank you
I
very much.
and I very much enjoy murder mysteries, so I'm going to
Yeah,
be all
good.
over that.
Oh, fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you. Very exciting.